Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Creation of Living podcast. I'm Heather Nichols. I'm the host, and we have today a very special guest, somebody very dear to me, and that is my son, my youngest son, Jaden Nichols, who is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. And I'm happy and really honored to get to share him with you all and introduce him to you all. So welcome, Jaden.
Thank you, Mom.
Thanks for being here.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about doing this for a while. We've been through a lot together in the past couple years. And some people, have heard some bits and pieces of my side of, what I've had to choose as a mom with Jaden, and just like this whole adventure of parenting teenagers. And I would say, like, for me, parenting is there's a big conversation about parenting. And then there's also, like, it's so different at every stage of life. And I could probably do a podcast about every phase of life, because they all present their own challenges and so much beauty as well. That's like so different depending on how old your kids are. And with, I'm actually like really, really enjoying the teenage years now, now that we are where we are. So you want to talk about, should I just kind of like give a little backstory of what we've been through? Yeah. Okay. So like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I'll let you speak to this more, but I would say Jaden was, he was having a pretty tough time. And we knew that something needed to happen. And a year and a half ago, we ended up sending him to a wilderness therapy intensive. It was like a 11-week wilderness therapy, like pretty hardcore in the woods, no communication with really anybody, hardly any communication with his parents and family, no phones, all that kind of stuff. And then from there, he went to a therapeutic boarding school. So he was in 8th grade, and he left for 8 months, right? Was it 8 months?
Something like that.
Yeah. And it was an intense time. It was an intense lead up, and it was an intense time while he was gone. And for him, I would say especially. And it changed so much for us in terms of how we are with each other. And that was really one of the things that we wanted to share. And I think that some of the backstory would be great. So what would you like to say about that time?
What time?
Like that whole process of like going away and how that was for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think like that feeling of like first going away and knowing I wasn't gonna be able to like talk to or see either my parents, my family, that's probably like one of the more like difficult things to accept. Like everything else was pretty easy as far as like getting acclimated to being out there. It's just like that separation and not being able to talk to my parents and my brother. Like that was really hard for me. I started to get more used to it, but like I'd say through all 11 weeks of like the first part, like that was like the one thing I never could like change. Like there was no really way to like help with it. I got to see them once in the middle, which was amazing. But yeah, I think being away from everything else, like some of the other stuff that you would think about came a lot easier than I thought, especially when I first got there. but that was one thing like I never really got over.
Yeah, that was, yeah. The wilderness part was, it was pretty intense. I mean, you were in the woods, like, and it was cold, and um doing a lot of therapy and a lot of like looking at yourself, and we were doing a lot of looking at ourselves too. Like there was when we did see each other, there was like a family therapy weekend. That was really beautiful. And I would say like the beginning of creating a different relationship with each other.
Yeah.
So how would you, if you were to describe our relationship before you left, how would you describe that?
There was just always like a lot of tension that it never really broke. I mean, sometimes it would, but like I was always like scared to like hang out or be around you a lot, because I felt like we would just fight, because that's what tended to happen. And so that made me kind of push myself away from being around family in general, not just you. And yeah, then once I started to like push myself away from you guys, when I started to feel more like sadness and loneliness. I thought it was helping because I wasn't going to get in fights with you guys, but we never really got to talk about any of it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it was like, just like, watching you like isolate yourself and feeling so, really worried about you, and you know, all the like the people that you were hanging out with that I didn't know, and I didn't have a good sense of them, and the things that you were doing. Like I just had this sense that you were really getting into some sticky situations, and it was for me, it was like it was so hard to really let go, like to give you space, because I didn't feel good about the decisions you were making. And so for me, it's like that I kept kind of tightening the reins and tightening the control, because I was so worried about him. I was like constantly worried about you, and really kind of like saw where like the future that I could see that you were creating, and was like not willing to watch you go down that path. Which is why that's why we sent him away. But that was definitely the hardest thing I've done so far as a parent. Um, it was, I can't even put words to it. It was pretty gut wrenching.
yeah.
Yeah. And then what you're like, so when you were gone, what changed for you? Like, what did you start to, because you did a lot of work, like you did a lot of work on yourself, and I did a lot of work on myself. Like we both did a lot of work on ourselves. Everybody in the family did. And then we did a lot of work as a family. But what would you say started to change for you?
I think like for the most immediate things, like being away from everything, it made me start to find like a lot of happiness and enjoyment in like things that I would say most people take for granted every day. Like whenever I got to read your guys' letters or write back and talk to you guys, like that was like the best part of my week. And like I guess I just started to realize like how much I would take that for granted if I was here. Because I can come upstairs or text you or call you and talk to you whenever. But like that the lack of being able to talk to anyone really. There was no like, obviously, it was not like TV, phones. The food was really bland. Like, just, I think, especially when I first got out of wilderness and when I first got home, like, all these little things that like your average person, it's just like it's part of your day. Like those like little things started to make me happy. And when like when in your life, like talking to your parents or your family makes you happy, that that does a lot for someone. Like it's a lot harder to get stuck in like it's like depression or like loneliness when like you really find that enjoyment in little things that are going to happen every day. And then like the other thing was working on my like self-image and like starting to like take care of and love myself and like kind of not letting like other people shape the way that I'm going to do things or like the way I'm going to live my life, and sort of like building up myself enough to the point where like I can actually say no to people. And like I find myself now using that all the time because like I mean I go to a public high school, and like I'm never gonna be away from everything that would like trigger me in any way, but like just the ability to say no and like stick true to what I like know I am gonna do. It's really important.
Yeah. You really, I mean, when you changed so much, so much. I mean, it was just so beautiful to watch you. Um, and the conversations that we could have about our relationship and like what you know, what you would ask for, like when we, because once he went into the residential thing, the like treatment place, then we were like more, we talked more, and we did like family therapy every week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you did therapy you were doing therapy every day there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like group stuff. And so we were doing a lot of more like intensive therapy there, and we would go visit more often and stuff like that. And that was actually like, that was such a sweet time for me, like to go. I have very fond memories of Salt Lake City because whenever I was there, I got to have quality time with you, and it was so wonderful. Like just to like, so like you were talking about, like have that like so much gratitude for being together, like that thing that we used to take for granted, and to really enjoy it and appreciate it was so sweet. But yeah, there was so much healing, I would say, like you starting to really love yourself, and us being able to talk about, some things that had happened, or how like family dynamics, or how we had been with each other. And like how, like if I speak for me, like how I had been parenting you, like to be able to talk about like what worked and what didn't work, and what you would like to have and what I would like to have, that was really, it was such an amazing time, and most families don't ever do that, like it's like you live your life and you do your thing and you go about your day, and you don't have those opportunities to go, hey, like what's working here, and what's not working here. And to have a therapist help us with that was huge, because we couldn't have gotten to so much of that by ourselves.
Yeah.
We needed some help. Yeah. So one of the things the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, is because I've learned so much about parenting from you. And like, I feel like you've raised me as a parent, like you've shown me how to parent you in a way that works for you, and I also like, I get to have say in that, right? I get to also parent you how it works for me. And I would say part of it is like, I really I don't like to see myself as a parent. I much prefer to see it as like a facilitation, like helping you like find your way in the world and see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And, you know, when we sent you away, it was like, that was an intervention that needed to happen, but to like get you on a different track. But it's felt like since you've been home and, you know, that it's been so much more of like us creating it together and working together. So what would you say about that? Like, what do you, is there anything you could say that, like that you think might be helpful for parents and teens to hear about? Because we have a really different relationship than we did. And we also have a really different relationship than most parents and teenagers, right? I mean, I would say that. That's my take on it. Do you?
Yeah, I think like one thing for me was just like starting to realize like when you would like tell me I couldn't do something or couldn't go somewhere or whatever, like the realization that you're not just like trying to be a bitch.
Yeah.
There's always like a reason and like almost like a love behind it. Like you're looking out for me, or like you're doing it because like for whatever your reason is, but like that reason isn't just like to spite me.
Right. Right.
And like there's like a mutual kind of like sometimes I get my way, sometimes I don't. And like either way, to me now it's not like this huge deal, because like I understand where you're coming from with it. And I think that just comes through talking, like more having a, it doesn't even have to be anything like super like crazy deep, but like really the more you just communicate with your parents and talk to them, like the more they're going to start to understand you and you're going to start to understand them. And then when it comes to like these things that you start to fight over, you both have an understanding of where each other are coming from. And ultimately, whatever happens, like you can both accept it.
That is brilliant. That's so brilliant. Yeah. And for me, it's like, I don't, you know, obviously, like, I don't say no to be a bitch. And I never did. And it was different because we didn't have those communicate, like there was so much communication that wasn't happening, you know, before. But now it's like I rarely say no to you. Like I mean, that's kind of, do you think I rarely say no, or do you think I say no a lot? Curious.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think you say no that much.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really interested in that as a way of relating to you. Like, again, like I don't, it's not about being a parent. It's more like, hey, I mean, here's the thing. And this is, you know, this may sound weird to some people, but for me, it's like, I have always seen you as a being, like an infinite being who is not, you know, 15 years old, but actually like a creature who's been around for a long time, you know, and had many lifetimes, and I've had many lifetimes, and we've had many lifetimes together. And in that way, it's like, what I'm interested in is you actually knowing the thing that I want the most for you is you knowing what's true for you, you know, like how, like what brings you joy, you know, and what's true for you in the world, and how your choice, like how you can choose anything, and how your choice creates your life, you know, then what your choices create. And so for me, it's like, and, you know, to speak to other parents, it's like, I've noticed recently that I'm like, wow, you know, so Jaden's brother Avery is going to be 18 in a couple months and going to college next year. And I'm like, wow, like there's this part of me that's like, wow, he's actually not going to be in the house. You know, like there's a bigger level of letting go of like, he's going to be out in the world by himself, like on his own, you know, not by him. Like he's never alone. Like he's always has us, his parents, but but this totally different level of like letting go of my child, and not having the daily check-ins, or, he's sleeping under the same roof. So I know at least that he comes home at night and he's safe or whatever. And it's been so interesting. I mean, with both of you guys, because you're you're learning to drive now, and you're just like out in the world so much more. I mean, this past weekend, he's like, Mom, take me to my friend's house on Friday, and I'll see you on Sunday, and I'm like, okay, and I was like, oh, like, I want to see you this weekend. But I remember being 15 and not really wanting to hang out with my parents, and I'm like, I mean, I think I'm kind of cooler than that, but but I get it. I'm not as cool as another 15-year-old. As much as I think I am, but just that, like, really letting them, like, giving them a longer leash than I might want to with my mind, just giving them a longer leash and being like, hey, you go and you make your choices, and, checking in with me, like my awareness and my intuition is, and like, if there's something that feels a little bit off, like asking about it, but really, like, it takes a lot of courage actually to parent with that level of, like, giving your kids that much freedom. And it's not just like blank slate freedom. It's not like go do whatever you want. It's like, checking in with myself and being like, okay, I'm a little nervous right now about this, but asking myself questions, like, is this actually going to be okay? Am I just thinking, or is this maybe not even mine, or whatever? And like, and continually really making the demand of me that I give them as much space to go out and create their lives and choose as possible. It's different, it's definitely a very different way of parenting. And like I said, not really parenting. That's not the word that I like to use. So, yeah. So how is that for you?
Yeah, I think like what it all comes down to on either side is like trust.
Yeah.
Like I now have built up, like, I guess, the ability to trust you, like, your opinions, and like trust trust your, like, intuitions on what's right and what's going to be better. And I think, like, the same way, I think you've began, like, to trust me infinitely more. And like, I think before I went away and now I had the same amount of freedom, but like before there wasn't like any trust communication. Like the reason I had freedom is because I would just do it.
I couldn't stop him, which is always the case with kids, teenagers, well, anybody really.
And yeah, I think like building up that trust and communication, I have just as much freedom. I love myself more. We have a better relationship. I spend more time with you. We hang out more. Like, to me, like, I have the same amount of fun with my friends, and I do the same amount of fun stuff. And like, but now I'm able to like not like isolate myself and like live in my room. And there wasn't like much of a trade-off for it.
What do you mean by that? There wasn't much of a trade-off for it?
Like the difference between how much freedom I had just leaving the house and how much freedom I have with you trusting me. There's little to no difference.
Right. But the energy is totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Completely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, I remember kind of like my kind of like mantra in a way, or like my sense with myself when you were gone was like, you're not coming home. And I think I said this to you like a bunch of times, where I was like, you're not coming home until you really, really love yourself, because I knew that if you got to that place, and it was so, I have to say, like, to the parents out there. I mean, there's probably a wide variety of parents listening or watching this. But you know, I mean, we had to do something really extreme, really challenging to initiate that process, you know. And you know, some people would say we did it kind of, it wasn't quite like, it wasn't totally necessary, and yet it, like, I knew that it was, because I knew where you were going, you know. It was, yeah.
It's probably totally nice.
Yeah, I knew that. But you know, it's like he wasn't as like sort of like far down that path as a lot of other kids. Like, I think when you got there, that was actually, I've never even asked you this, but that was one of the things that I've wondered about, is like, if you saw a lot of kids that were further along down that path of not loving themselves and making bad decisions and stuff, and that was part of your, like, did you see where you could have gone? Like, what could have happened to you with some of the other kids you were around?
I really looked at it like that, but I was always like the youngest person there. Like,
Yeah.
at both places. And I definitely saw like how like it was more challenging for them to come back from it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I mean, like I know people who were at like in wilderness for like 13, 14 weeks. And I know people that were visited for like a year.
The residential.
And it's just like, I think there's like a point where it becomes like just that much harder to like bring it back. And I don't think I was there yet.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say you were the youngest, but in a lot of ways, I mean, and I don't know all the other kids intimately, obviously, but my sense was that you also had a level of maturity that a lot of kids that were older than you didn't have. Does that seem, it's not about putting them down, but just I don't know, that's kind of how it seemed to me, but I'm wrong. So
I think for the first little bit, it was different, but I think I had an easier time than anyone else. Like, I sort of just right when I got there, like after about a week, I kind of realized like I can't escape. I'm in the middle of the desert. I don't have like a car. There's nothing I can do.
I remember actually when you first got there, and he had the most amazing counselor, therapist, like beautiful badger, wonderful man. And he said, he called us like a couple days in, and he goes, he's telling everybody that you guys are gonna come and pick him up. We were like, oh, sweetie, you know, like, wish we could, you know. But yeah, you did, you embraced it quickly. You rolled up your sleeves, you know, and you're like, okay, I need to do some work here, you know. And that's where I kind of went off on the tangent, is like, I knew that like, once you really loved yourself, that you would make decisions based on that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all that I wanted for you, you know, like for me, I'm like, I wanted to see who you were from that place, you know. I'm like, hey, like, as the Jaden that loves himself, like, what do you want to choose? What do you want to create as your life? Like, you know, and that's still how I am with you. It's like, hey, you don't have to do high school if you don't want to, you know, like, what would you like to do? What would you like to create? I'm always game for different conversations about that kind of stuff, you know, because I trust you to choose what's going to be good for you, because you love yourself so much more now. And it was such an absolutely exquisitely beautiful thing to watch you do that with yourself. And to watch us do that with ourselves and with each other. It's like such a gift.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you, like, when I went first away, I think you saw better than I did. like what, like how our relationship could be, how I could be. And I think I was so like trapped in whatever was going on. Like I never realized like in, like any part of like who I was, like what I really cared about in life, like what mattered to me. And like I guess you just had some like innate sense of that. Like you really knew like what I was capable of.
Yeah, still do. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for rising to the challenge of stepping into that. Because, what you've chosen, I mean, you're 15 years old, like what you've chosen, you probably don't really have as much of a perspective on this, or maybe you do, but I don't know. But what you've chosen and what you've been through with yourself as a 15-year-old, most people never do that in their entire lives.
Yeah.
And that's like,
Something you see a lot in like the news,
yeah,
all the shit that happens.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for you and what you've chosen, and what you keep choosing and who you are. I'm so proud of you. It's like really amazing. Yeah. You're my hero. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that piece, that you just spoke about, like the thing of like that I knew what you were capable of, that to me is like, that's why I was able to do what we did. I mean, his dad too, like we in different ways, um but we saw this brilliant person, and this brilliant kid that and when you've known your child since they were a little kid, like you see so much of their personality and their future and their brilliance and what they know and their all these beautiful things about them, and then you see that light kind of dim, and then it's like there's the normal teenage stuff that teenagers go through, and then there's the like, okay, this actually, we need to do something here, and as much as it was like I said, the hardest thing that I've ever done to send him away, absolutely just gut-wrenching. I knew there was also this joy to it in a way. Like once he got there and he landed and I knew he was safe and I knew he was being so well taken care of by some amazing people. It was like, okay, this is, he's in amazing hands. And he's, being loved and cared for by, and like called to his brilliance by some amazing people. And it made it all worth it. So just want to say that too, for any parents that are, struggling with what to do. It's like, those interventions can be really tough. And but like if you are like the thing that your kid is capable of, like if you let that be the thing that guides you, it's it definitely is. It's like a huge gift to them, and now we get to have that Jaden, and enjoy him. So yeah. So thanks everybody so much for being with us and listening in. And yeah, there's just so many different possibilities available with all of this. And we wish you all the best. So, and thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Take care. Bye.